Anna Banana, the Frog Lady, future overlooker of the cosmos. Anne has gone through a surprising amount of transformations throughout the course of Amphibia's events. Starting off as a pretty average 13-year-old girl with above average athleticism, to sacrificing her own life to save the continent of Amphibia where her friends that she considered family were located. Each new transformation has made Anne stronger than her previous one to where many consider her to be one of the strongest modern Disney series protagonists. Early episodes of Amphibia have Anne struggling to fight common toad soldiers from across the valley, to then fighting on equal footing with characters like King Andrius in True Colors. A character who was strong enough to almost single-handedly hold off Amphibia's resistance army without hardly breaking a sweat. This army consisting of characters like Buff Loggle, Beatrix, and Tritonio, for example, with the power she gained from her stone not even being at its highest potential. Later on in the climax of the series, having a rematch with King Andrius, which was a lot closer than the first due to Andrius having the Diaplosaurus robot suit. Nevertheless, she still managed to have the upper hand in that fight. Then, of course, her fight alongside Sasha and Marcy against the core, where she took out several close to planet-sized robotic bugs, followed by her final calamity attack using the combined power of all three stones, which had enough force behind it to completely obliterate the core. Which of course put so much strain on her body that it actually killed her and she needed to be revived by the Cosmic Guardian. Due to Anne having about 4 or 5 main different forms throughout Amphibia, I'm going to go over all 4 in which they happened in chronological order, meaning her base self from her arrival into Amphibia is the first, and ending with her white calamity form that used all 3 stones so she could destroy the core last. Although it may have always not felt like it in her own mind, Anne Boonchuy was destined for greatness. Well, at least somewhat. She, along with her best friends Sasha and Marcy, were part of a prophecy where their experiences on Amphibia would decide if they were to fight to save it or embrace the fall of it, with all 3 girls having a wide variety of both positive and negative experiences while there, with a lot of Anne's early negative experiences being revolved around Sasha in specific, their friendship becoming incredibly toxic over the years without Anne really noticing it until they met up again in Amphibia. Probably due to how genuinely nice the Planter family had been to her while she was in Wyrtwood, it made Sasha's toxic traits stick out that much more. Eventually, the two of them would have a sword fight with Anne coming out on top, which on the surface may seem like it's not too crazy due to Sasha just being another 13-year-old girl, right? But we gotta remember, this is the same Sasha that took out giant herons earlier in the season with just her bare fists, no weapon. So the fact that she still lost to Anne here when Anne wasn't even tapping into her calamity powers even slightly put her at the same level as an amphibian heron, which is around building level, I'd say, since in their debut episode, they were able to deal significant damage to the Toad Tower. Anne's building level status was further backed up right at the start of Season 2 as well. In the season's debut episode, she was forced to fight a giant vegetable monster that completely destroyed the planter home, where she would unknowingly tap into her calamity powers and took this thing down without suffering any injuries from the monster itself. To be clear, these powers only seem to activate under high stress / severe emotional moments at this point in time. Obviously, the planter home is even smaller than Toad Tower is, but there's no question that Anne gets stronger when tapping into these powers, even if it's the slightest amount. So putting her around large building level for her eyes only glowing state seems to be pretty fair to me. Later on in Season 2, Anne would reunite with Marcy and again Sasha, where they learned they would need to go on a quest to 3 different temples thinking it would help them get home. While that technically was the case, the temples also drained the girls from their calamity powers. Though that was only partially the case with Anne, since when her stone was in the middle of its draining process, she took it with her in a rush when she thought her friends might have been in danger, allowing Anne to keep a partial connection with her stone without knowing. When the time came to be sent home, everyone would learn about Sasha's second betrayal and Andrius' plan to invade Earth using the Calamity Box, where Anne would have a rematch with Sasha and win once again. You could argue that Sasha wasn't fighting 100% seriously here due to trying to warn Anne about Andrius' potential double cross and not really wanting to fight, but I'd have to disagree. She seemed fairly serious in those action scenes. This was also not the same Sasha from Reunion either. She had been training her butt off throughout Season 2 and was shown to have immense physical strength now, but still lost. Later, Sprig Planter would be dropped to his supposed death, allowing Anne to unlock her second calamity state. Now Anne was much faster and stronger. Just slamming one foot on the ground was enough to knock an entire FBI squadron on their keisters. Anne was also completely overpowering base Andrius too. The only reason she couldn't completely blow him to bits was because it was her first time in this transformed state, so not only did it not last very long, but she was completely winded after the fact, to the point where she couldn't even walk and the planters had to carry her into the portal back to Earth. Though as more time passed and she got used to the powers, they would no longer result in her passing out every single time. mainly highlighted in the episode Escape to Amphibia, where she activated her powers for the first time with positive emotions rather than negative ones. She not only powered the interdimensional portal by essentially turning into a human battery, but was able to walk on her own normally once she and the planners were back in Amphibia. Most of her abilities in this form stem from her increased physical strength and speed. However, the blue energy that emits from her factor into her attacking power quite a bit as well, such as when she exploded a couple Frobots just from slamming her hands onto the ground near them before punching Andreas, with even more of them exploding later in the fight when Anne went for a dive punch that Andreas blocked. Even though he blocked it, the impact itself on his cyborg shield was enough to cause another explosion, destroying 6 more Frobots in the process with enough blowback to knock Polly over a bit. While she was on Earth, we didn't really get to see any new powers unlocked during the time she activated her Calamity form. Like I briefly mentioned before, it felt like the story was more focused on her just gaining more control over them and being able to activate them via positive emotions rather than negative ones while she was still in Los Angeles. It wasn't until her rematch with Andreas during All In where we saw the peak potential of her semi-transformed Calamity state. Her durability in particular was especially highlighted here. For instance, completely eating a tail whip from Andreas that had enough force behind it to knock her through 2 skyscrapers, and she didn't even lose her ability to fly. Another punch from him was arguably even more powerful because this time the contact Anne made with it completely knocked a building down, followed by Andreas punching her again into the roof of the building, which did not knock it down, but it was still strong enough to leave a crater of concrete where Anne landed. This was enough to knock away Anne's powers for a bit, but it seems pretty clear it wasn't solely this attack that did it. All those other attacks I mentioned prior happened before this one, so the damage over time began to wear her down, I think. In terms of new powers seen for the first time, Anne was able to use telekinesis on her sword with perfect pinpoint accuracy, which is very impressive considering this was the first time on screen she had used this power. Coupled with the fact that she was able to use it on a specific item from so far away, along with the sword destroying a city block in Los Angeles while it was coming towards her, that attack alone puts her at city block level in this state, meaning I think it would be fitting to round her overall power up to about town level or large town level at the very least, since the combined forces between her and Andreas fighting is around city level due to all the collateral damage they are causing in Los Angeles, which is the second largest city in the United States by population. Eventually, Andreas would allow himself to be defeated after reading the long-lost letter from his friend Leaf so the Earth invasion could be stopped for good. Marcy would also be freed from the Corps' control, though this didn't mean the hive mind didn't have other plans involving the moon, killing everyone on Amphibia. Once everyone was back in Amphibia, the 3 friends would take their final stand to destroy Amphibia's most evil entity for good, thus having to take the initiative with the box to unlock the full potential from each of their respective Calamity Stones, resulting in new designs for all 3 of them and some new powers as well. The first thing Anne and her friends did was fly to the moon from Amphibia's surface within seconds. To give a general idea of how fast this is, to get to the real-life moon from Earth is about a 240,000 mile journey, meaning if the Calamity Trio was able to get there within 5 or so seconds, they were going at a speed of 48,000 miles per second or 172,800,000 miles per hour. That's a lot of mileage right there. Anne demonstrated a new power here too, involving a giant tennis racket and tennis ball that would break off into a bunch of smaller domino-shaped blasts that would destroy 7 giant robots in one fell swoop. Everything Anne created here coming from her Calamity energy and nothing more. Then of course her ultimate form she unlocked to defeat the Corps. The blast from this attack was powerful enough to completely destroy a moon-sized object, though it killed Anne in the process. So at her absolute best, Anne does have moon-level attacking power. The problem lies in her body being able to handle this power. She can't really be put at a consistent moon level if said power destroys her own body whenever she uses it, you know? It's not the same as someone like Sailor Moon from Sailor Moon. So if I were to circle back to her fully powered blue Calamity form, that's probably anywhere between island level to continent/multi-continent level. Since it's definitely stronger than the form she used against Andreas both times, but still wasn't enough to stop the Moon Corps even while Marcy and Sasha were still able to use their powers and help. Andreas' Frobots even tried helping too, and that still couldn't stop it. Although never explicitly shown during the series finale, since Anne was set up to be the next in line as the Cosmic Guardian after she died, she does have some unspoken potential to be at that level. This was a being that created the Calamity Stones after all, overlooking worlds for millennia, which means she could be anywhere between multiversal level to completely boundless. Hard to say since the Guardian didn't really have a whole lot of screen time, and what we know about its power stems from a lot of word-of-mouth interactions. Nevertheless, it's still cool to think about how Anne would have looked in that position as essentially God. Well, I think that just about wraps up everything about Anne. Another big shout out to Bone for the incredible artwork for this video's thumbnail, and be sure to follow their socials in the description below. Fun fact, the pose for this thumbnail was inspired by this shot of the first One for All user in My Hero Hero Academia's 5th season opening sequence. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like down below. It helps out a ton. But for now, I will see you guys next time. Peace out. Take care. Bye-bye.